Now I'm pleased to welcome back two of golf's finest cappers in Mr. Patrick Gates from the Oddsbreakers and Brady Kannon from the Heat Strokes Pod. You can follow them on Twitter at Gator Betting and at Las Vegas Golfer. Summer is around the corner, guys. The U.S. Open is here, but we had a crazy finish last week to the Canadian Open, didn't we, Patrick? What the heck happened?
Yeah, absolutely a wild finish between playoff between Nick Taylor and Tommy Fleetwood. Nick Taylor finally gets it done for his home country here. Absolutely crazy scenes too. Adam Hadwin obviously almost stole the show, it seems like, on that 18th green getting tackled by that bodyguard. But yeah, great week of golf for sure. And obviously the Canadian Open delivered. Don't know what Brady thoughts are on that as well.
Oh, just the same as you, man. You're right. Hadwin kind of stole the show, but pretty tough to steal the show with what Nick Taylor did. Just awesome on the fourth playoff hole, nailing a 72-foot eagle putt. And honestly, I was kind of rooting for Tommy. He's still searching for his first PGA Tour victory. He's won all over the world, but still hasn't won on the PGA Tour. And he's kind of one of my players I enjoy watching. He's got a great personality, great attitude, and I was kind of rooting for him. But boy, the way Taylor got it done, how could you have not been thrilled for he and his country, the first Canadian Open winner from Canada in 69 years. It was, went with quite a bang the way they reemerged with the Canadian winner there. It was awesome to watch and leads us right into U.S. Open week.
It really does. And it's funny. I was thinking about Canada. I'm a big UFC guy. A ton of Canadians won at the UFC event, 289 last week. And so it just made it right that a Canadian golfer won their event, and it kind of makes sense. But I understand, cheering for Fleetwood and everything and want his first victory like that. That's something that he's still got to get obviously off of his back. But before we get into the U.S. Open here, quick comments on this. Brady, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Live Golf PGA merger itself from a sports betting perspective?
Well, I think from a betting perspective, it's all positive. And, aside from that, we really don't know what's going to happen. Now, apparently, the U.S. government is getting involved to kind of find out how this transaction is being done. And I understand that. It was kind of all of a sudden, we all found out about it last week on Twitter, including the PGA Tour players. We don't really know any details about it. I think, to begin, there was more questions than answers. And now it seems there's even more questions than answers as we've gone on a week since the announcement. So, I think a lot of us just really don't know what exactly is going on. Hopefully when the 2024 schedule comes out on the PGA Tour, we have a little bit more clarity. I don't know if they're going to run side by side where the Live circuit will still have separate events and everybody's allowed to participate in whatever one they want. I don't know. But again, from a betting perspective, if we have these fields with the entire Live roster now infused once again into the PGA Tour schedule, I think it's good from a betting perspective. Obviously, you're going to have more options, but a guy on my Heat Strokes podcast, my guest, James Mazzola, also a very well-respected voice in the golf betting community. He made a comment that I thought really resonated with me, and that was, some of these mid-range guys that are kind of in the top 40 to 50 in the world that we're betting on a week-to-week basis, say an Aaron Wise, a Keith Mitchell, a Siwoo Kim, and we're betting on them in week-to-week PGA Tour events, and they're in the neighborhood of 35 or 40 to 1. When we get that Live influx back into the mix here, these guys are going to be trading at more like 75, 80 to 1. So I think it creates some value, certainly on some very good players, when you bring that Live contingent back into the mix.
Patrick, what are your thoughts on the same perspective from a sports betting? Obviously, looking at it holistically, is this going to make it better for us as bettors, or is it going to be more confusing?
Yeah, I think Brady summed it up kind of perfectly here. Obviously, with the influx of Live guys here, if it does happen, who knows kind of what the terms are, given the fines, given everything is it. But if the Live guys if you get some of those big names back, so your Brooks Koepkas, kind of even your middle name guys, your Joaquin Niemans, who's won before on the PGA Tour last year at the Genesis, the increase in the strength of field is better for the odds. That's kind of the general point there that everyone agrees about too. If LIV does stay kind of its own tour too, we may have better odds on the LIV Tour. The LIV Tour is not generally proposed on most books here, most major regulated sports books in the US here. Maybe it's new merger or kind of alliance, so per se, with the PGA Tour kind of puts a better image on them, and we do start getting odds on them as well. And then even it goes even further than that too. If there is kind of that team aspect integrated into the PGA Tour, it's already kind of in the Zurich as well. We might have a new kind of market open up as well with team betting that we really haven't seen before as well on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, well, there you go. And I agree with you guys. It's almost like looking at the Derby. You have 19 horses, and it sure increases the payouts on some of those horses when there's more contestants, right? And I think that's where we wanted to go. I personally like competition to make leagues better in general, but when they're neck and neck, it's almost like, you are splitting up a lot of these future prices on top 20s, top 10s, obviously to win it all as well. So I agree completely with you guys. But interestingly enough, the U.S. Open this year, well, pretty much any year is going to have some of these LIV golfers, and there's some big names in there right now, isn't there, Brady?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that for the first two majors of the season. And, it's kind of interesting that right after the Masters, when we saw Brooks Koepka hold the 54-hole lead and end up finishing second to Jon Rahm, and then you've got Phil Mickelson runner-up, Patrick Reed finishing fourth. You had a number of the LIV players. I want to say it was 5 or 6 that finished in the top 20. And it was just a few days after that Masters that apparently these conversations started between the Saudis and the PGA Tour. So that certainly got their attention. And then Koepka goes on to win the PGA. So, maybe the PGA's ultimate wishes were that the LIV was not going to be a factor. Well, obviously, a lot of these guys are still some of the best players in the world. And that's been proven in the form of where they're placing on the leaderboard in the first couple majors of the year. So here they are again, and I expect some of them will be in contention once again at LA Country Club.
Yeah, makes sense. Patrick?
Yeah, certainly agree. Obviously, it was crazy to see. Obviously, Brooks Koepka's had an up and down career, specifically as of late here, and to see him kind of come out at the Masters and just continue to show that he still has that elite level of golf that he could play was just incredible to watch, and watch him kind of duel down the stretch with Jon Rahm on Sunday. And I think, Phil honestly kind of flew majority under the radar there, finishing tied for second was just incredible. No one expected that. I think his odds were 100 to 1 plus in that tournament as well. And while he wasn't really in contention, still for him, his name to be on top of a leaderboard in a major championship is a feat in itself.
You wonder if those, Koepka and Phil there in that major pushed him over the edge a little bit to get this deal done. They're like, wow, this is embarrassing. You win the PGA, but then all of a sudden, we're going to get together here. Everybody's happy again. Obviously, it was a very hypocritical situation, but, on this podcast, we care more about the sports betting side of things anyway. But getting to what's important, that's the U.S. Open this week. Brady, what course will the U.S. Open be played on this year? And is this new for U.S. Opens over history?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And yes, it's the Los Angeles Country Club, which is just uber exclusive. It's kind of interesting reading about this club, and you have to do a lot of research because there's no past history to go off of. They've held some more minor major championships, women's U.S. amateur, that type of thing, but haven't held a golf tournament on the PGA Tour since 1940. That was the LA Open, and there hasn't been a United States Open championship for the men's side held in Los Angeles since 1948, when Ben Hogan won at another George Thomas design, Riviera Country Club, of course, where we see them play the Genesis Invitational every year on the tour. But yeah, the long and the short of it, this is absolutely a new piece of property that we have not seen in a long, long time. And it's right in the middle of Beverly Hills on Wilshire Boulevard. And it's this massive, 300 plus acre property. They'll play the North Course. George Thomas designed it in 1928. And then in the mid 2000s, Gil Hanse and Jeff Shackelford were brought in to renovate the property. It had become overgrown, and, some of the natural erosion over time had kind of gotten away from what Thomas really wanted this golf course to be many, many years ago. And so they restored it. They brought the barranca back into play, this dry riverbed that weaves its way throughout the property. It's built on a couple of hillsides. You've got ravines and valleys and elevation change. It's kind of wild, the topography of this property right in the middle of quote unquote downtown Los Angeles. It's like almost Augusta National with the rolling hills and the elevation change and the big wide fairways, again, right in the middle of LA. So I think it's going to be a thrilling United States Open Championship. Guys, the US Open for a while now has actually been my least favorite of the four majors, because with Augusta, you have the tradition and the drama on Sunday. I think the PGA Championship has been a huge resurgence effort over the last 15 years or so. That's become a very exciting championship. And then the British Open, that's where golf started, the weather, the links style golf. It's just something so pure and great to watch in the middle of the night over here on the West Coast. And the US Open for many years is just, a train wreck, and guys are struggling to make par, and +3 wins the tournament. And it's not all that exciting always to watch, with guys, looking at eagle putts and making birdies and making a charge. That doesn't happen all that often at a US Open, a typical US Open. But in this case, I think this is a very different brand of US Open golf. And I do think your winning score will get into maybe the 5 to 8 under par range. I do think you're going to see some fireworks. I also think you're going to see some carnage, doubles and triple bogeys. But I think all of that, and including the golf course itself, is going to make for a very compelling watch this week.
Brady, you haven't golfed at the LA Country Club, have you?
No. I mean, what's interesting, Kiev? They didn't even let movie stars in. We don't want any publicity. We don't want movie stars. I mean, it's very just random, probably very, very wealthy people in the Los Angeles area that have belonged and do belong to this club. But it was not all the glitz and glamour where they were letting the celebrities and what have you, the big names, to join this club. It's always been extremely low key. They say this piece of property is worth multiple $1 billion. I mean, think about it, 300 some acres sitting right there in Beverly Hills. It's not hard to understand how much this property is worth, but it's great that the USGA was finally able to convince this membership to hold a major championship that we can all enjoy and view, because for many years they did not want any sort of publicity.
Sounds like Bobolinks in Chicago. Yeah, very exclusive stuff. Oh man, I've heard stories about that place. But no, I almost think that the fact that they don't let the drama come in is almost kind of cool to me a little bit. But this segment was brought to you by AG1. Why take a bunch of different things when you can just mix 1 scoop of powder in water once a day? Every scoop is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and the whole food sourced ingredients of high quality that gives me major benefits like gut and mood support, boosted energy, and even healthier looking skin, hair, and nails. If you want to take ownership of your health, try AG1 and get 1 free year of vitamin D and AG1 Travel Packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/theoddsbreakers or click on our podcast episode description. Patrick, let's talk about the course a little bit at LA Country Club. Could you go over some of the course information?
Yeah, I mean, so I just want to echo on Brady said too, kind of the exclusivity of it. I mean, it is crazy too. So the last time the course kind of underwent that Gil Hanse renovation as well. The clubhouse obviously underwent kind of a renovation as well. And I was reading about it, and you saw that they rededicated the terrace to Ronald Reagan, who is a fellow member of this club too, just speaking to kind of who is a member at this club, basically, of just, it is the upper echelon of these kind of wealthy elites and powerful people in the world as well. And yeah, I mean, LACC, like Brady talked about, not much is known about this course at all. The last time he saw it was the 2017 Walker Cup, where you do have some kind of notable names on that team. Your Scotty Schefflers, your Colin Morikawas, you go down the list. Will Zalatoris, who's obviously out for the year with a back injury, Maverick McNeely, Cam Champ, the list goes on here. So that was kind of the last time this course was in the news as well. Before that, you had the 2013 Pac-12 championship, which Max Homa won as well. So there's several other guys who kind of have some connections, if you can say, even possibly to this course as well. But it's a fairly long course at playing over 7,400 yards here, par 70 here. Interesting to note as well, we got bent grass greens here, which we typically don't see out in California here. I think the only other course on the tour that features these bent grass greens is Torrey Pines South. So it's always tough too when you're looking at course comps here as well here. And I've seen a bunch of different names thrown around. Obviously, Augusta's 1, 2, Southern Hills as well. But it's really tough to kind of pinpoint what course directly compares to this because of its unique features and kind of how it sets up itself. So the one thing that they've been talking about as well is the wide fairways this week too. The fairways are on the larger side when you're strictly looking at a length number, but the pinpoint accuracy required off some of these fairways is immeasurable here, especially at number 13 and 14. The slope kind of on that driving area of where these players are going to land the ball is utterly ridiculous. There's some videos out there, obviously, just showing kind of, even if you are able to hit that kind of left side of the fairway on 13 that you're looking for here, that ball can still end up in the right rough. So it's going to be an extremely challenging course here. There's several blind approach shots that players are going to have to hit this week. The greens are on the larger side as well, but the rough, even around the greens, kind of what the USA Open is known for, is just extremely punishable here. So there's several factors to consider here when you're kind of looking at this course in general.
Anything to add to that, Brady?
Well, I think Patrick hit the nail on the head, and probably one of the most glaring points about this golf course, maybe two areas that Patrick touched on. First of all, the fairways, they're canted or sloped in one direction or the other. And even though they're extremely wide, like Patrick said, there is a slot that you have to hit in order to, have position A with your tee ball. And if you miss that by just a little bit, you could be down one side or the other and possibly in the barranca or set with a very blind second shot. And I think that's what George Thomas wanted. They talk about kind of the buzzword of the week has been angles. He wants to see different angles and provide different looks for players to have to try and hit different shots. And I think that's where creativity comes in quite a bit versus other U.S. Opens. Other U.S. Opens, it's, hit it down the middle, hit the green, 2-putt, and move on. I think the bounces and the slopes and the barranca and the cant to these fairways is going to bring a lot of different golf shots into play. So off the tee, you have that to negotiate. And then maybe the very most important area of this test is going to be around the greens. Like Patrick touched on there, there's incredible rough around the edges of the bunkers around the greens. The bunkers are really rugged and deep. And there's a little bit of a mix here. You've got some areas off the fairway where the rough is very thick, some areas off the fairway where there's not much rough to speak of at all. And then similar around the greens, you might have some areas where it's really thick, and then another area where you have a shaved runoff area, and a ball that misses the green is going to roll down into a collection area, and you've got to figure out how you're going to chip it and get it up and down from there. So around the greens, there's a lot of different options and results that players are going to face. And I think the same is true with the tee ball and the fairway. So, Thomas's intention of wanting to create a lot of different strategy and thought process for these players, I think is going to play out this week. And it's going to take a ton of patience, I believe, and not only controlling your golf ball off the tee, but a magnificent short game.
Yeah, I would almost think strokes gained tee to green would be a key statistic looking at here. Patrick, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but like different courses have different ways of handicapping. What's one of the main ones you're going to be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, with the new course too, there's going to be a variety of narratives this week. Every one kind of that I've been seeing has a different approach to this. I think the biggest difference too is the biggest narrative to me is driving distance versus driving accuracy here. Obviously, like we had mentioned too, it's a long course, but the fairways are very firm, and there are several of kind of those sweet spots that the ball will roll out at. So I'm curious to hear what Brady's thoughts on here of kind of if he's prioritizing either driving distance or driving accuracy this week when kind of looking at that statistic, because really you can argue it feels like either way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I've seen both sides of the coin as well. I kind of favor accuracy a little more, but length is certainly going to be helpful because this course is long. Now, you mentioned it, Patrick, a little over 7,400 yards in a par 70, but they have a lot of options with these tee boxes. So I think you're going to see the distance of the course fluctuate quite a bit day to day in the way the USGA sets it up. Now, on the other hand, you have some guys that tend to spray the ball off the tee, but I don't think they'll be as penalized as normal. Now, they may end up with a blind second shot or a ball in some light rough off the fairway, but it's not going to be like the PGA Championship where if you miss the fairway, you're in the schmutz. And it's, certainly almost a guaranteed bogey, if not worse. I think, again, Thomas's intention here was to create options. And so if you're not, spot on accurate off the tee, I don't think that's going to necessarily take you out of the hole. If you're somewhat accurate, I think you're going to be okay. So I think a combination of being somewhat accurate and somewhat long is probably ideal here. And then from there, it's creativity and making some tremendous long iron shots. And again, the short game. So, it's hard to say which is more important, Patrick. I think it's a little bit of a combination of both. I mentioned the length of the course. You can't be incredibly short, but you touched on it as well. The golf course is going to be so firm and fast that the short guys aren't going to be out of this either.
All right. No, fair enough. And why don't we talk about some of the favorites then coming in? And I'm looking at the Betfred odds screen, betfredsports.com. Scotty Scheffler is the one that looks like the favorite to me. Then Jon Rahm, Bruce Koepka, Rory McIlroy. I'm guessing this is pretty similar in other books as well. Are these deserving favorites, Brady?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Koepka comes off of the PGA Championship victory. He's proven, a runner-up at the Masters. He's proven that he's back to Big Bad Brooks, and all he does is win majors. Jon Rahm, the number 2 player in the world, just won the Masters. Rory McIlroy has probably been the one guy that's been off a tick, but if you look at what he's done, it hasn't been all that bad, and just had another pretty decent tournament in Canada as the 2-time defending champion. And then you've got Scotty Scheffler at the top, who, the putter has really been eluding him the last couple of weeks, but boy, his tee to green game, you mentioned strokes gained tee to green, Kiev. This guy is on a Tiger Woods-like level right now with his ball striking and his tee to green game. If he can just putt average this week, he ought to win this thing by 4 or 5 shots over everybody else. That's how good his ball striking has been as of late.
All right, fair enough. Patrick, any thoughts on the favorites, and how about a few sleepers?
Yeah, no, I mean, Brady kind of touched on it. I mean, they're the favorites for a reason, right? Scotty Scheffler pretty much won his first major championship of the year last year at the Masters, hasn't won since, but he's been in great form as of late. I mean, this year it's kind of just been ridiculous too. And the only thing that's stopping him from winning every event is putting. So that's kind of the approach on Scotty every week. And you kind of look at the odds and you go down the board, you can kind of argue for everyone there. I mean, Rory's an interesting one that I think everyone kind of ponders at every week with every major championship as well. His last major obviously was the 2014 PGA Championship here. Coming into it in pretty good form here with 2 top 10 finishes in here. Also a previous US Open winner as well. So I think Rory's kind of that one spot that one favorite that everyone kind of puts a question mark on. Just given kind of his inability to kind of close that major championship kind of in the past few years, especially since 2014. But in terms of sleepers here, the top of the board is pretty heavy, and given kind of the difficulty of this course, you're going to kind of see these major guys be in contention here. I have no doubt one of them will be in there come Sunday. A few guys down the board, obviously, that I'm kind of looking at playing is Jordan Spieth here at 33 to 1. But obviously, it's not so much of a long shot there. Obviously, your long shots are going to be a little bit more pricey, but I do really like Spieth this year. Doesn't have a win this year, lost in the RBC Heritage playoff to Matthew Fitzpatrick, the U.S. Open winner last year at the Country Club. He's been dealing with a wrist injury, though, this year, too. You can see him kind of taped up, especially at the PGA Championship and the Charles Schwab and the Wells Fargo, kind of just really struggling with certain moments with that shot here. But he does come into this event off a top 5 finish at the Memorial last week. His also 2 best driving performances were in 2 of his last 3 starts as well, which has kind of been his kryptonite. When looking at his game as well, he's a great bent grass putter as well. And then also a 2015 U.S. Open champion at Chambers Bay, which is, again, I've heard tossed around as a comparable course this week. So, yeah, I don't mind Spieth this week. He's a great touch around the greens as well. And then is just an incredible ball striker, gaining strokes kind of in 11 of his last 12 on approach.
Now, fair enough. So Spieth here, 20-1 in this book. I just saw 25-1 in DraftKings, so it looks like maybe it's moving a little bit against you. I bet you if you shop around, you can still find that 30-1.
Yeah.
32-1 price.
A few other names that I just want to mention too is Ricky, obviously kind of a resurgence here as well. And then kind of a live dark horse here would be Mito Pereira.
Okay, that's a 80-1. Now that's more my style, buddy.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. 80-1 is a great price. And it looks, what's the deal with Mito? Why him?
Yeah, so Mito's coming off a 3rd place finish at Live DC. And I think Mito's most known for, unfortunately, is kind of that blow up last year at the PGA Championship at Southern Hills. He had the lead going into 18 and just that questionable decision of he pulls driver out, kind of runs into that little creek area as well. But we saw him play well at the PGA Championship earlier this year, finishing in the top 20 as well. So, yeah, I mean, and then even we've kind of seen that path to success from coming from playing well in your last live event, as Brooks kind of won live Orlando and then finished tied for 2nd at the Masters and then finished 6th at Live Tulsa and won the PGA Championship. So just a name out there that I wouldn't be too shocked if he kind of creeps his way up the leaderboard. All
right, Brady, how about you? Who are some of your sleepers here? And then I'll even ask you, who are some of the top ones that shouldn't be so top, some fades?
Well, Patrick mentioned Ricky Fowler, and Ricky Fowler, if you mention that, in the past 5-6 years or so that he was your pick to win a tournament, you might have gotten a chuckle out of somebody, but it is no longer a joke. This guy is really playing tremendous golf. And you go back to 2014, he finished top 5 in every major. So he's got the history. He's got an incredible history at Augusta National. A number of the Gil Hanse renovated courses he's done well on at the past. Shinnecock in 2018, the U.S. Open there, another course that, may have some resemblance as far as the linksish type style and some of the elevation change. Fowler had a top 20 finish there. And you put, his past history together with what he's doing currently, and he certainly makes a lot of sense. And he's anywhere from like 60 to 80-1 to win this thing. Also, I like to always look at the Charles Schwab Challenge, Colonial Country Club, and the Memorial, a couple of recent tournaments on the PGA Tour that I think are very good indicators of U.S. Open success. And I mean, Colonial Country Club held a U.S. Open in 1941, and the golf course has never really changed since then. The Memorial has churned out a number of U.S. Open winners: Bryson DeChambeau, Justin Rose, Tiger Woods, John Rahm. So I think both of those courses make a lot of sense in trying to handicap a U.S. Open winner. And Ricky Fowler at Colonial just recently finished 6th and then was 9th at the Memorial. So that kind of tells you, I think, that he certainly should be in the conversation here. Speaking of Justin Rose, I also think he is playing fantastic golf as of late. A 6th place finish earlier this year at the Players Championship. He won at Pebble Beach. A nice finish last week in Canada. Also a Gil Hanse restoration last year at the Canadian Open in St. George's Golf and Country Club, where Justin Rose finished 4th. I think Marion, where Justin Rose won the 2013 U.S. Open, has some similarities with the Parkland style and the rugged bunkers. So Justin Rose checks a lot of boxes as well. He's got an incredible track record at Augusta. He's just a great player that does a lot of things very well. His long iron play is exceptional. He's one of the best putters in the world, and he's very accurate off the tee. So I think he's a long shot that could show well. I mean, he's shown up this year. I think it was 13th at the PGA, or no, it was a top 10, I believe, at the PGA Championship. So, the old gray mare, Justin Rose, is playing some darn good golf this year and could be in the mix again. And then Patrick threw out Mito Pereira as a long shot live player. I'm going to go one even a little deeper, and I think Patrick Reed is possibly in play here. I got him at 110-1, and I found that number to be a little crazy. I've seen him as low as 80, maybe even 70, I think I saw on Patrick Reed, but I was able to find 110. And, we've kind of been talking about it throughout the show. Chambers Bay, Shinnecock, Augusta, these rolling elevation change type golf courses, atypical of a U.S. Open, creativity and imagination being needed. You have to be a short game wizard. Patrick Reed is all of those. And he's won at Augusta, and he's won at Kapalua, and he was 14th at Chambers Bay in 2015. He was also 4th at Shinnecock in 2018. He was also just 18th at the PGA Championship recently and 4th at the Masters. So why is all of a sudden this guy trading at triple digits? He seems to still have the game in my mind.
All right. Great stuff. And, when I think about the live golfers, I think about the big win that live just had. You wonder if these guys kind of come in and have a little extra confidence, in this situation, maybe not being as hated by the media and other fans as they once were. So that's an interesting little angle that I'm thinking about. Moving on to maybe some fades, and this could be some, match play ideas here. One, I'm just looking at Victor Hovland here at 16-1. Now his price here weeks ago before he won was a lot higher, wasn't it, Patrick?
Yeah. I mean, Victor Hovland, obviously, as we know, kind of at the PGA Championship, him and Brooks kind of dueled it out on Sunday, and unfortunately hit that shot on 16 that landed in that bunker that kind of led to Brooks kind of trotting to victory there on Sunday as well. He rebounded well with a win at the Memorial. But even before that, he finished T16 at the Charles Schwab Challenge here. So, I mean, Victor obviously is one of the elite iron players on tour as well. And his putting's been improving lately when you kind of look at his strokes gained trending in the right direction here. So that's something to notice. Victor's kryptonite for a while has been his play around the green. When you kind of look at these tournaments that do factor in that short game, Victor Hovland was always a name that you consider, but you kind of would throw out in certain tournaments as well. So that is my one concern with Victor Hovland. I mean, obviously he has been improving in that area, gaining strokes in 2 of his last 3 events, but his short game has always kind of been, per se, his kryptonite when you're kind of looking at his skill set.
Okay, fair enough. Brady, are you going to possibly play some matchups? And is there anyone on top that you should possibly fade in this situation?
I did play a few matchups, and basically 2 players. I've got a few matchups where I'm just kind of betting on one guy, but a couple of other matchups where I'm going against a particular guy. And one matchup is going against Max Homa with Matthew Fitzpatrick. Matthew Fitzpatrick over Max Homa. Homa, there's been a lot of buzz, and Patrick talked about it in the 2013 Pac-12 championships. He shot a course record here of 61. But he just hasn't been in great form as of late. He's been losing strokes to the field in his last few starts on tour. He has never fared well in major championships. And I think that, coupled with the attention that he's getting, because, he's the California kid, he always wins in California. And, after he won the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines this year, everybody immediately jumped on him to win the U.S. Open. So I think there's maybe just a little too much love for Max Homa, combined with the fact that he hasn't been in great form as of late. And then, speaking of not been in great form, Justin Thomas. I took Tony Finau in a matchup over Justin Thomas. JT's odds are all the way to 50-1 now to win the U.S. Open. And it was funny. It was at the Memorial, a golf course, Muirfield Village, where he's had a ton of success, and his odds got up to 30-1. And I said, you know what? This is starting to become, maybe it was 35. I can't remember, but I said, this is starting to become like a threshold point where it might be time to go back and bet on Justin Thomas. Well, he disappointed once again. And here we are at the US Open, and his odds are all the way to 50. So even at that price, I'm not going to try and take another stab with JT. It's just been a bad season for him.
I fade him. He costed you money. Get him out of here, man. That's what I'm saying. Oh no, great stuff and great information here. I'm looking at those matchups, man. You broke them down very well. So Patrick, I'm not sure if you completely have your ticket yet, but how are you going to approach your ticket? Is there going to be some top 20s, top 10s? What are you going to do for the scores?
Yeah, kind of stick with a similar format that I've been using is obviously your outrights as well, and then kind of going down the placement. Your top 10s, your top 20s, your top 30s even. I mean, the market too is tough this week too. When you're looking at kind of that top 40 market here, obviously you have to be selective into which book you use given kind of those dead heat rules. But I've kind of leaned more towards top 30s this week. I have a few guys that I've kind of circled as well. And then even a few matchups. Brady had mentioned kind of fading Max Homa here. This week, I'm kind of fading Dustin Johnson. One of the matchups that I do like is Matthew Fitzpatrick over Dustin Johnson here. Dustin Johnson has kind of struggled as of late here. When you look at his last few finishes, T48 at the Masters, obviously, and then he won Live Tulsa. But I mean, if you kind of look at his last few finishes on that Live Tour, they haven't been great. And we're really not sure kind of what game he's coming into this course with as well. And Fitzpatrick dealing with a neck injury earlier in the season, rebounded at the RBC Heritage as well, but he's been playing pretty well as of late, finishing T9 at the Memorial and then T20 at the RBC Canadian Open. So I do like that price on Fitzpatrick over Dustin Johnson this week as one of kind of the matchups that I have circled as well. And then in addition to fading Max Homa, the Cam Smith over Max Homa this week as well as another matchup that I kind of have my eye on.
All right. Well, yeah, DJ hasn't been to form lately, and if he's just got too many little kids running around. I know how that goes, man. I'm deep in that stuff, so makes sense. Brady, how about you? How are you approaching your ticket?
Well, I mentioned Matthew Fitzpatrick over Max Homa, and then also Tony Finau over Justin Rose. I also played Ricky Fowler at -120 over Sungjae Im. Sungjae Im is another guy that's been on the downturn really ever since he made the trip back home and then tried to come back the very next week and play what I think was the PGA Championship. He opened up the PGA with an 80 and eventually missed the cut there. And he just really hasn't been the same Sungjae Im that we're used to week in and week out, who is typically a force. But it's been 3 or 4 weeks in a row where he's been losing strokes to the field and just off his game a tick. And we talked about Ricky Fowler really on the upswing. So I thought it was a pretty affordable price to lay with Fowler over Sungjae Im. As far as the outrights, I did go to the very top of the board and take a stab with Scotty Scheffler. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, if this guy can just be an average putter this week, he should win this thing. I mean, this guy's been an awful putter and has finished runner-up and third. So he's just really incredible. And again, if the putter is just a little bit better this week, he's going to be absolutely right there again, if not in the winner's circle. I mentioned the long shots, Justin Rose at 75 to 1. I've seen that number go all the way down to as low as 40. Ricky Fowler, I got at 80 to 1. He's in the neighborhood of 60 or so, I believe, currently, which I still think is a fine bet. And then Patrick Reed at 110 to 1. I also played those guys. Scotty Scheffler, I played for a top 10 finish at -135. And then Rose, Fowler, and Reed, I also played for top 20 finishes.
All right. No, great stuff. And I didn't mention the weather because I think it's going to be looking good, right? LA, June. I'm not seeing a lot of rain. Patrick, is that still accurate?
Yeah, it looks to be high 60s, low 70s, kind of all week as well. And the wind, obviously, I think isn't really going to be a factor here, just based on kind of the preliminary weather report that we're seeing.
Okay, good stuff here. Well, it's Tuesday, so we still have a little time for it to change. Hopefully, it remains very solid. Brady, thank you so much for coming on this show, my man. Really appreciate all your breakdowns here for the U.S. Open. Where could our listeners get your great information and media?
Yeah, you can find my written work at golf.com. And I also write for the PGA Tour, their betting division, Golf Bet. And then I have come on Sports Grid Radio 3 times a week. And you can kind of figure it all out if you just follow me on Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer. All the information will be there for you.
Patrick, how about you? What you got going on? And where could we get your great article?
Yeah, of course, at theoddsbreakers.com. U.S. Open article will be out later today, in addition to Stanley Cup Game 5 preview. So be on the lookout for that.
Yes, and be on the lookout for Patrick's show a little bit later today too. Possibly the last game of the NHL this season, just like we had for the NBA. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. We'll be texting.
Thanks for having me, Kia.
Appreciate it.